in the 1960s, there was this report by Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the Moynihan Report. You ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He spoke about how black women being head of the households, were problematic, and basically it kind of didn't it didn't enable black men to ascend as high, right? Some along those lines. Black people, African people, we tend to be matriarchal, right? To have a black woman who is the head of the household is not anything that's uncommon. Going back a little bit, you have black women. See, in Africa, it was the first place that black women ran the military, ran the nation, was deified, right? So black women have just recently meaning over the past few hundred years, have not been equal to a man, right? So, and nowadays, when you have black women who are getting more educated and getting property and, becoming, higher economic standing, that's because black women pose less of a threat to white supremacy than black males. If you look at 1967, I believe, Loving v. Virginia, the case that actually ended miscegenation laws, meaning when blacks couldn't marry whites, right? It was a white man and a black woman. It was a black man and a white woman, that wouldn't have happened. Law still probably be in place. So, black women on one level, for millennia, have been kicking behind. If you look at in ancient Kemet, you were the pharaoh because of who your mother was, right? The pharaoh was the embodiment of God, of the deity, right? But you were the pharaoh and you had your power because of who your mother was, right? So it was matrilineal, not patrilineal. In Europe, if you had the queen, it's because of who her father was, or the king was through his father. In Africa, it was different. So you see the residual today where, I'm gonna go back again. In ancient Greece, women couldn't own property. Women were, couldn't vote. And unless they were prostitutes, they couldn't walk in the street by themselves. So that's one reason why Cleopatra, when she went there and she was walking by herself, she caused a lot of envy. So, and they say, and the Europeans say that, prostitution is the oldest profession. That's not true. The oldest profession is midwifery. Because you're having babies, and you have to have somebody to help them have the babies, and women did it. So, of course, that was in Africa. So, you have partially the fact that black women have for millennia kicked behind. There's a story about Alexander the Greek, or if you want to call him, Macedonian, fine. When he went to Kemet and he conquered, right, kicked the Persians out, and he didn't go to Ethiopia. The story goes that Ethiopian Queen, or Candace, was lined up waiting for him to fight. And he turned around and went back and stayed in Egypt, right? So, again, the pharaonic kingship came initially from Nubia and Ethiopia. And in those parts, the queen, or the Candace, right, chose the pharaoh. And if she didn't want you to be the pharaoh, she could tell you to go. So she not only was the queen and chose the king, so to speak, she led the military. And when we think about nature, right, the term comes from the word netter, which is a offspring of the goddess Net, right? So natural principles come from the female, and nature is female, African female. And when you look at movies, whenever they have a mother figure, it's always a black woman. There was a movie called I forgot the name of the movie with Cloud Owen, and I think Children of God, I believe. And it was like there were no babies born for like 30, 40 years. and there was a black girl who was pregnant. And they were trying. And the movie was about them protecting her. Of course, in the Matrix, you have the mother right there.
Yeah.
Captain Planet, remember, that Whoopi Goldberg was Gia. So you always have black women in maternal roles. So fast forward to now, with black men being homosexualized, being incarcerated, being, disenfranchised, not knowing how to properly, take care of ourselves, take care of the woman, being removed from the house with housing projects or with family courts. You have all these mechanisms by which the state basically breaks up the black man and the black woman, right? Because if you look at it, right, the land is the female and the government is the male, right? So if you have the land, because ecology is where you get economies from, because the first economy is the household, right? And mistress, which now means side chick, was initially the woman who ran the house.
Mm-hmm.
So you've had women running the house for, again, millennia. Black women doing so. You have one white woman who's known as a military hero, and that's Joan of Arc or Jeanne d'Arc, right? And I don't even know how bad she was because it's like they blow stuff up so much because she's the only one. But you don't have white women, European women who are leaders of military, deified, as well as, ruling nations. Or you're not the queen or the king because of who your mama is. That's in Africa. So, and plus, I think one of the reasons why black women are doing better is that black women are less inclined to go with a white man or go outside their race to get married. They have a stronger identification and commitment to their race, to their people, right? So because of that stronger commitment, they're doing better than the black men who are losing themselves trying to appease white interests, and now they're here, there, and everywhere. So it's many reasons. Partially, like I said, because black men are more of a threat, but other reasons because black women are just good at what they do. Good at running businesses, good at organizing situations, good at running homes, know how to own property, know how to take care of things,
I mean, but it's across the board though. The numbers are staggering.
Right. So again, you have the innate ability plus societal interests or societal forces which are boosting that. We have the innate ability also, but it's societal forces suppressing it. And it's only going to get worse or better for black women, so to speak. Better in the sense of they can gain more social standing and more money. But the thing about it is also the more money and social standing a woman has, especially a black woman has, the less mates she has to choose from. But on the flip side, the more money and social standing that men have, the more mates we have to choose from. Because you have to ask a woman, will you be with a man who makes less than you? It's a question that has to be answered. Because a lot of men don't want to make less than their woman. On the flip side, you ain't got to ask a man, will you be with a woman who makes less than you? It's like whatever. So, there's social forces at work which are supporting and expounding upon the natural greatness of black women. And you have this divide going on and has to be addressed.
You mentioned earlier that Africa was the first to have female deities.
Mm-hmm.
And
matter of fact, the first deity was female.
Was female, okay. And Europe had male deities. And so when I think of Europe, I mostly think Germany. Because most of Europe was conquered by German tribes, so most of them could tie their blood back to Germany. So if you take the Anglos and the Saxons, that's a German tribe, they took England. You take the Rus, that's a German tribe, they took Russia. You take the Visigoths, they took Sweden. Mm-hmm. You take the Franks, they took France. Yeah. So if you look at it, and you have Austria, and you have Swiss German. Yeah. So if you look at it, most of Europe is German. But they call Africa the motherland and Germany the fatherland.
Yep.
Is that where that distinction comes from?
Absolutely. Because I spoke about this before, how the male principle or the masculine principle in Europe is the patriarchal model in Europe where the aggression comes from, and where the homosexuality comes from, is is part of their cultural mores. See, with us, if you're in a nice climate, and you don't have to worry about surviving, you can have high ideas. You can think. You can talk. You can have a good time. If you get into a conflict, I can leave. See, you and I ain't trying to get in no fights, right? We do pretty well. We're not struggling to find our next meal. But if somebody else struggling to find their next meal, they may kill us, right? So that European mindset coming from those German tribes, right? And remember how they were treated. When the Western Roman Empire fell around 400 AD, right? This is where you get the term beast, ancient from, right? Whenever somebody says something's ancient, they basically mean before the fall of the Western Roman Empire, right? When they had took over, those Germanic tribes, they were, treating them really poorly. They made them eat dogs, they were just abusing them and just, they treat them so horribly that once the Germans got loose, they said, listen, I'm gonna kill all y'all. And when they came into power, you went to the Dark Ages in Europe, But yeah, like the patriarchal model is the European model, right? Now, I would say newer Europe, older Europe, which came from, people by African peoples, again, it's named after an African woman, Europa, right? So you have that initial European society, which is based off of a matriarchal model. But as time went on, the patriarchal model grew, and now we are where we are. And you have their women who are treated like secondary citizens, who are treated as property, and you have terms like opposite sex, where, again, opposites are opposing, where in Africa you have the term complementary sex. Complements are cooperational. So with the European, it's man versus woman, man versus nature, man versus God. So it's, so the woman who is his natural counterpart, in order to create life, is now you fighting to create life.